In this example, you will use Mental Mill to create a shader for a character's bust, and then load it in 3ds Max to view the results. The Mental Mill interface is node-based, making it very easy to operate. You choose a node from the toolbox and drag it to the graph editor. The first node you choose is typically an illumination node. There are many to choose from depending on the look you are trying to create. The illumination fong node is a good starting point. Notice the various channels that you can control, such as diffuse and specular. Notice also the commonly used list that you can control to keep the tools that you favor close together. Organizing this list is easy. You can delete an entry by right-clicking and selecting Delete, and you can add an entry using a simple click and drag from another list. At this point, the shader's parameters are pretty straightforward. You can easily change the diffuse color or the specular color. You can also change the sample slot geometry with a right-click. More importantly, you can feed other nodes into these channels. Let's add a bitmap to replace the diffuse color. This can be done by dragging a texture lookup 2D node into the graph editor. You can then choose a texture that you want to use, in this case, head diffuse JPEG. To connect the two nodes together, it's a simple click and drag from the output of one node to the input of the other. Similarly, you can connect another bitmap to the specular color channel. Next, you will deal with a normal map. Notice that the illumination node doesn't have a channel ready for that. You can fix that by right-clicking the node and then choosing Add State Parameter, Normal. The node's end result turns temporarily black. Add another texture lookup node and notice that it cannot be directly connected to the normal channel. It needs a bit of processing in the form of a normals make normal node. This acts as a go-between, and now the sequence works better. At any time, you can use the layout graph Ctrl-L command to reorder the nodes. Another point to consider is how Mental Mill and 3ds Max communicate to keep UV coordinates integrity. If you want to preserve any UV work you have done in 3ds Max, you need to add a UV node to the network. Add a state texture coordinate 2D node to the graph editor. If you don't want to scroll the toolbox, you can achieve the same results with a right-click in the graph editor. Remember also that you can add a node to your favorite list for easier access. Once you have that node in the network, you need to instance it to the UV channels of the texture lookup nodes. This ensures UV coordinates set in 3ds Max are preserved. You're almost there. Next, you need to compile the shader results into what is called a phenomenon. This is done by selecting all the nodes you created, right-clicking an empty area, and then selecting Create New Phenomenon from Selection. You are prompted for a name. Type in Head. The network is collapsed into a single node, which you can expand again and resize, or simply maximize. You can use the mouse wheel to pan and zoom. Here's an important bit of information to consider. In order for a shader to behave properly in 3ds Max, the last link into the result node should come from a node with a single output. This is not the case here, as the illumination fong node has 4 outputs. Add a color brightness node to the network. This one has a single output. Disconnect the last link by dragging it to an empty area, and then rewire the connection to go through the brightness node. This not only fixes the links, but also provides you with an additional level of control. Finally, you need to expose the parameters that you would like to control in 3ds Max. This is done by right-clicking a node parameter, such as the diffuse texture, and then choosing the Add option. It is a good idea to rename the exposed parameters to make them easy to understand. In this case, use diffuse map as a display name and simply diffuse as an internal name. Use a similar technique for the specular color texture. When you try it on the normal texture, be careful not to use normal as an internal name. This term is reserved. Use norm instead. Other parameters you may want to expose include the normal or bump amount, and the brightness amount. You are ready to save your shader and try it in 3ds Max. Choosing Save As, save your shader as head.xmsl.